Well, today's the last day of the fair.
Big Texas song.
Oh, poor child.
Big Tex and I, we were there Thursday night, just commenting that, 60 years. But, just nothing in this world is permanent, not even Big Tex. Really, and I didn't know Big Tex had burned up. I was teaching a seminar on Friday, and then somebody just handed their iPhone to me. No, that's just a baby. Big Tex burned up. And so we're going to build the Big Tex back bigger and better. But you know what? At some point, Big Tex is going to burn again. It's just
not if he's born again.
Yeah. There's our solution. There's our solution. So I didn't know what. It was probably those deep-fried jalapeno volcano wings.
Jim, this is not original with me. I wish it had been, but his demise was rather appropriate. It was deep-fried.
He went with his boots on. Oh.
And we both thought he should be sitting.
Well. Well, it's kind of an interesting ad. In Friday's paper, of course, I had no way of knowing this was going to happen, but there's the Fireplace and Grill Factory Outlet, and they had a little advertisement in Friday's paper about their pre-season gas dog sale, and they had 12 burning displays. They also have the Big Tex series. That's probably going to be a really hot fire. So we'll see what it does to their sales. Okay, and then let's see. New York court deals blow to marriage laws. This is very, very interesting. This affects us. This affects us today. Ruling says federal statute violates same-sex couples' rights by denying benefits. So the Federal Appeals Court in Manhattan ruled Thursday that the federal statute defining marriage as a union between a man and a woman unlawfully discriminates against same-sex married couples by denying them equal federal benefits. I thought this was a states' rights issue initially. We have DOMA in Texas. We have Defense of Marriage Act in Texas. It's constantly under attack. But now this is going to be the start. This will end up in the Supreme Court. This is going to go on the way. Because we have a federal court saying the federal statute is unconstitutional. So here we go. Jesus said, as in the days of Noah. It's going to be just like the days of Noah. He told us to look for those sorts of things. And here they come. Down to a Chicago group was suing some Koontz Middle School because they would put up faith-based signs at the football game. And you can look at some of these signs. Never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. And just different scripture verses. They have hanging, and they'd have the football players run through banners and things. And so this group is even from Texas. And they're saying, well, no, we find that offensive.
But the good news is, again, the state of Texas is stepped up and is advocating and going to
favor of
soon.
State of Texas has stepped up. So we still are the buckle of the Bible Belt, and there will always be a remnant. There's always going to be a remnant. And Jesus said, no, there's a wide path that leads to destruction. Most folks are on that. The other road is narrow, so take the narrow road. Well, on your handout today, this was really fascinating. This was in yesterday's Jerusalem Post. For the first time ever, the IDF Homefront Command is having an earthquake drill. And they're holding it, well, it's already been held. But what they wanted to do was to come together with all their emergency services, government ministries, and they're going to simulate a major earthquake which is going to cause 7,000 casualties. So they picked the number 7,000. And so they've got, the TV broadcasts and the radio broadcasts, and they're preparing for an earthquake. Israel sits on the Syrian-African fault line, and earthquakes have played a major part in the history of that region. Earthquakes have played a major part, frankly, in our theology with regard to Christendom and events that surround that. And I thought, let's just take a few verses.
Jim, I
Yes.
promise to shut up after
Yeah.
this, because I have way too many
Yeah.
comments. But, you know, there's another way to look at this, though. This may be a way for Israel, I mean, this may be really a sign in the way, this may be a way for Israel to practice after they bomb Iran. I mean, seriously, without making the world aware of what they're doing. They're saying, oh, well, this is an earthquake. Whereas they're going to do the same things they need to protect from a rocket attack. I mean, 7,000 casualties.
Absolutely.
What have you. So, you know, they may be closer to doing something on their own than we're comfortable to think of that.
Well, they're not.
Anyway, so much for that.
Well, they're not going to allow that to stand. They're not going to let Iran become nuclear. And we know prophetically, Iran is going to come against Israel. They're going to do it sooner or later. We know that's a fact. We can write that. Well, it's already written down. You don't have to write it. It's already done. We'll just need to read it. But they're coming. They're coming, and it's going to happen. And that's, you know, the Lord is going to rise up, and the Lord is going to protect them, most of them, during that time. So we'll look a little bit at that this morning. Let's go to Luke 21. And we'll pick up in, I guess in verse 8. And Jesus gave this list of things to look for, because the disciples were saying, initially it talked about the destruction of the temple in verse 6, because they were commenting on the temple, and they'd come by and said, my goodness, you know, how marvelous this is. And Jesus says in verse 6, and as for those things which ye behold, the days will come in which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And that was absolutely true. Jesus was talking about the temple being destroyed, and we know it was destroyed in 70 AD by Titus. And as far as the prophetic value of not one stone being left upon another, that's a factual occurrence, because the gold that was the last stand they had was at the temple after the walls were breached. There were 2 walls that Titus had to breach. And in reading the historical account of that attack in 70 AD, when the Romans breached the first wall, the fighting completely stopped. Everything stopped. And Josephus writes that both sides just completely stopped, because they were both stunned. They were looking at each other. The Jews were shocked that the wall came down. The Romans were shocked that after that wall there still was another wall to breach. And they held out valiantly, and it was a replay of what we saw here in Babylon, because that was the last stand, was the temple. And after the Hebrews had retreated to the temple, it took Nebuchadnezzar another 3 weeks to get him out of there, and finally he said, burn it down. Titus didn't authorize the burning of the temple, but it was burned down anyway, and with all the gold that was stored in there, as the fire was burning, the gold melted, and the gold melted into the cracks of the stones themselves that were holding the temple up, the bases of the temple. And so the gold melted into those cracks. And so after the Romans sacked Jerusalem, they went and they disassembled it stone by stone, so they could scrape out the gold between the cracks and make sure they got all the gold. And there literally was not one stone left upon another, because they were taking the gold out of that. And the same scenario happened with Nebuchadnezzar, actually, after he set the place on fire. So in verse 8, so he says, take heed that you won't be deceived. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. We see that today. And when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified. Isn't that the word that he uses, terror? Yeah, don't be terrified, for these things must first come to pass. But the end is not by and by. You know, there was a time, there's been a time on planet Earth when there were no wars. no wars at all. When was that time? After Roman Elk? There was a time. Also, when Jesus was on earth, no conflicts. No conflicts. The prophetic pre-fulfillment of the millennial reign. There is peace on earth when Jesus is here. There really is. All right. 11. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places. Earthquakes everywhere. We've never had so many earthquakes. And you go to the Geological Survey, the U.S. Geological Survey, and you can look at all the earthquakes that are in places that they've never been before. We have earthquakes here in North Texas. We have earthquakes in Oklahoma.
Have one in Carroll?
A couple weeks
We have
ago.
one in Carrollton. We have them. We have them everywhere. And that's what the scripture says. They're going to be in all these different places. All these different places around the world. And there are going to be famines and pestilences. You know, we got AIDS and West Nile and all these things that we don't seem to have here for. Fearful sights and signs from heaven. But before all these, they'll lay hands upon you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and the prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. It's very interesting here. Kings and rulers. This speaks to two different types of governments. Kingdoms and city-states. Right? You have kings and rulers. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what you shall answer. For I'll give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And you'll be betrayed by both parents and brethren, kinfolk, friends, and some of you shall be caused to put to death. And you'll be hated by all men for my name's sake. And there shall not one hair of your head perish, and your patience possess ye your souls. And the church is being persecuted very, very severely all over the world. We don't see it as much here. Now, we're on the way. You can't put up a little banner at the schoolhouse. You know, it's on the way. And then verse 21. This is what we're going to focus on today, because this is part of where we're going in our lesson in Jeremiah. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter into. So, with regard to Jerusalem, Jesus is saying there's a point in time when you see all these signs, and then you see these armies encompassed around Jerusalem. And part of these armies, we're going to see Persians, and there are going to be Iranians in part of the army. All right, at that point in time, go, leave. And we've studied this through, and we see how Petra is that mountain fortress, and it's the only place on planet Earth that the Antichrist has no authority. He's not given authority over Petra. He said, you go, don't come back. Go, go, go. That's interesting because Jeremiah had said the same thing. And in verse 22, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written be fulfilled. All right. Let's track through a few more, and let's look how earthquakes have affected history. God has ordained how they affect history. Matthew 27:51. Matthew 27:51. And the temple veil, and behold, the veil of the temple was rent in two from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. So we see the earthquake that happened in the temple veil was rent, signifying that you no longer had to be a high priest to enter into the temple, because the one blood sacrifice had been made for all, that all could enter behind the veil. Let's go to Matthew 28:2. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door, and sat upon it. Even the resurrection itself was tied to the earthquake. And these two signs are pre-prophetic revelations. When we go to Revelation, let's go to Revelation 6:12. Revelation 6:12, the sixth seal. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood, red moon. So we have the earthquake there with the opening of the sixth seal. Revelation 8:5, Revelation 8:5. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire at the altar and cast it to the earth, and there were voices and thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. Revelation 11:13. Right after the two witnesses, we have Moses and Elijah, right after they're slain. Then what happens? The same hour that they're raised up to heaven, and the same hour was there a great earthquake, and 1/10 part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven, that the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. What does the scripture tell us is going to happen there in Jerusalem? There's going to be this great earthquake, 1/10 of the city is going to fall, and how many are going to die? 7,000. Coincidence? No. God is ordained. I mean, they're preparing for an earthquake that's going to simulate 7,000.
But did they read this? I mean, I'd be kind of looking at it, even if I wasn't sure I believed it. I'd be like, well, okay.
There are more Messianic Jewish congregations. There are at least 40 Messianic Jewish congregations in Jerusalem. So I'd say yes. No, I don't. I'd say yes. And so, you look at this prophetically and you go, well, yeah, this is happening. And what my Hebrew friends tell me, especially Gershon Solomon, says that they believe that what is going to cause the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, to fall is going to be an earthquake. And then after it totally crumbles, then that's when they'll come and build the new temple. So that's what they're looking forward to. There have been several earthquakes. The ceiling in the mosque is already cracked. It's been cracked several times because of earthquakes. So I know the Lord's not going to let that mosque stand there and it's coming down, but it'll be the hand of the Lord that does it. All right. Well, let's go to Jeremiah. We're in Jeremiah. I think we left off in 39, and we're finishing 39. The overarching lesson from the next few chapters of Jeremiah is just obedience. Disobedience. And just when we thought things could not get worse, they've had pestilence, they've had famine, they've been under 18 months of siege. Nebuchadnezzar finally breaks through, he sacks the temple, he burns it down, he takes all the gold and silver, takes away all the accoutrements of the temple worship ceremonies, hauls them back to Babylon. Well, what happens to those that are left? And the next few chapters deal with that. And Jeremiah had already spoken very clearly with regard to the fate of Jerusalem and what they were to do. And he was telling them, you need to go. Turn yourself over to the Chaldeans. Turn yourself over. It's the only way that you'll be preserved. If you're allowed to go to Babylon, you'll be protected. And Nebuchadnezzar will protect you, and you'll have houses, and that remnant can be restored so that you can return back to Jerusalem. And so we're going to see just what happens to those who stayed behind. And we're going to pick up in chapter 39, verse 15. And we're coming back to Ebed-Melech. Remember, Ebed-Melech was the Ethiopian. And after Jeremiah had been placed into the prison and he was neck deep in the mud and muck that was in the dungeon, he went over and he told the king, he said, you know what? This man's a prophet of God. And your men have stuck him down in the miry muck. And I think something bad's going to happen if we don't get him out of there. And so the princes, all those in authority, now Obed-Edom, Ebed-Melech, he is an Ethiopian. Okay, so he's from a foreign country. He's gotten into a position of authority. He probably has great job security. He's with the nobles. He's with the elite. He stands against all of them. It was absolutely politically incorrect to go against what they had authorized because they were the ones that authorized putting Jeremiah down in the muck. He goes to the king. He tells him that that's very, very wrong. The king obeys and says, okay, you can go get him out. So it's Ebed-Melech that goes and gets Jeremiah out. So he makes these rags, and he puts them under his arms, and he lifts them out of the miry muck. But you can imagine the enemies he would have made having done that. And so let's see what happens to Ebed-Melech. Verse 15, now the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah while he was shut up in the court of the prison, saying, go and speak to Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Behold, I will bring my words upon this city for evil and not for good, and they shall be accomplished in that day before thee. But I will deliver thee in that day, saith the Lord, and thou shalt not be given into the hand of the men of whom thou art afraid. Now, who would Ebed-Melech be afraid of? Well, everybody. He has no friends anymore. He's lost favor with the princes. He's lost favor with the command there at the Devon. The Chaldeans have no special affinity for this Ethiopian. And so he would have been afraid of everybody because he stood out and protected Jeremiah in spite of whatever consequence might come his way. But the Lord is saying, I will deliver you. Do not be afraid of those men. 18. For I will surely deliver thee, and thou shalt not fall by the sword, but thy life shall be for a prize unto thee, because thou hast put thy trust in me, saith the Lord. Okay. He could have trusted in any number of things. Trusted in the king, trusted in his position, trusted in the graciousness of the Chaldeans. Where did Ebed-Melech put his trust? In the Lord. And what is both fascinating and discouraging is you have this foreigner coming in, and he gets it, he understands, and he believes what Jeremiah is saying. And the Hebrews that have been called to walk in that way, they reject Jeremiah. He's protected. Well, what's the lesson there? Ultimately, it's the Lord that delivers you. It's not your boss that protects you, or the economy, or the company, or the 401k. None of that. It's the Lord that protects you when you put your trust in what? You trust in Him. Your trust in Him. Okay, we're going to bring back another character in chapter 40, Gedaliah. Now, Gedaliah has a long history of authoritative rulers in his family line. He's from a noble family, high-ranking Jewish family in that culture. And what he has done, he's come back to Jerusalem. He had fled Jerusalem, and he's coming back, and he's made a deal with the Babylonians. And so let's see what happens to Gedaliah. He's coming back. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, after that, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had let him go to Ramah. When he was taken, him being bound in chains among all that were carried away captive of Jerusalem and Judah, which were carried away captive unto Babylon. So remember, Nebuchadnezzar had come into Jerusalem. They link up with Jeremiah, and they liked Jeremiah. And what was ironic is they were saying, you know, we understood what you said, and everything that you said has come to pass. Look, here we are in Jerusalem. In fact, we're at the east gate, just where you said we were going to be. And this has come about the people of Judah because of their sin. And so, Jeremiah, we're going to give you your freedom. You know, you can do whatever you want to do. We're going to let you go. So what does Jeremiah do? He stays there in Jerusalem. He stays there in Jerusalem. And unwittingly becomes gathered up among the captives again. So he's arrested again, and he's hauled off, and they're going over to another city. And so he's back in chains. He's been given his freedom. Ebed-Melech took him out of the miry muck. Nebuchadnezzar frees him, but he accidentally gets arrested again. Okay. So here goes our hero, verse 2. And the captain of the guard took Jeremiah and said unto him, The Lord thy God has pronounced this evil upon this place. Okay, so he recognizes Jeremiah and says, hey, look, your Lord has brought this to pass. Now the Lord hath brought it, and done according as he hath said, because ye have sinned against the Lord, and have not obeyed his voice. Therefore this thing has come upon you. And now behold, I loose thee this day from the chains which were upon thine hand. And if it seem good unto thee to come with me into Babylon, come, and I will look well unto thee. But if it seem ill unto thee to come with me, behold, into Babylon, forbear, behold, all the land is before thee, whether it seemeth good and convenient for thee to go, will thither go. So the captain of the guard here is telling Jeremiah, you know, this has all come to pass because of the sin of the people, but you are free. You're free. And I'm going to give you your freedom completely. If you'd like to come to Babylon with me, you come, and and I'll take care of you. I'll make sure that you're provided for. If you don't want to do that, you want to stay here, that's fine. You can make use of the land. You are completely free.
Jim,
Yes.
does the Bible give us any insight how these heathens received this kind of insight? Because this is pretty phenomenal. And he's got, you know, the commanding general of Nebuchadnezzar's army is prophesying just like Jeremiah did.
There are two things that happened. There are three waves. There are three waves of Hebrews that were taken. And the first wave, and then there's a second wave, and the third wave. This was in 586, or if you want to look at the Babylonian calendar, in the Babylonian calendar, they say it happened in 587. This was the final destruction. There had already been, before this happened, Hebrews in the land for over 30 years in Babylon. And you had two people who were very, very instrumental, who were already in Babylon. You had Ezekiel, or Zeke as his friends called him. And who did you have in that second wave? Okay. And remember, Daniel had quite an impact on the culture, he and his friends. And they're there, and they're getting thrown into the fiery furnace, and he's having these dreams and visions and answering the call to the king that the other witch doctors, or whatever they call themselves, they didn't know the dream. They didn't know the interpretation. So you had two very, very influential people that were already there. And Ezekiel, he was sending prophecies to Jerusalem, just like Jeremiah was sending prophecies to those in Babylon. They were crossing. They were crossing in their correspondence. So there was already a move of God within there. And so I think by the time you come to 586, there's this thought, you know what? This guy was spot on. Jeremiah was spot on. And it was Daniel and his prophecies. This sowed the seed for a movement, the Zoroastrians. And that's why when they see that star in the east over Bethlehem, these are the guys coming from the east. They understood the prophecies of Daniel. They knew what to look for. And they're on their way. They're on their way to Bethlehem because they understand that this God has some merit. So that would be my thought, is that back in Babylon, these guys are shaking things up. And to this day, Ezekiel has a very, very nice grave. And it's huge in Babylon. Ezekiel was buried in Babylon. So you can see just how the work of a few men affect their entire culture. And plus, I'm sure it makes an impact to you when you throw the guys in the furnace and they don't burn up. Unlike me. That's what made it. So that, you know, that's going on. And so you've got these cross culture prophets that are working within the people. But no, it is fascinating that the people of God totally reject Jeremiah, and the heathen, they get it. The heathen get it. Our hero here is an Ethiopian. You got the captain of the guard of Babylon saying, hey, God is doing all this. All right. So, verse 5. Now, while he was not yet gone back, he said, go back also to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, whom the king of Babylon hath made governor over the cities of Judah, and dwell with him among the people, or go wheresoever it seemeth convenient for thee to go. So the captain of the guard gave him food and a reward, and let him go. And then Jeremiah went unto Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, to Mizpah, and dwelt with him among the people that were left in the land. All right. So he decides to go back to Gedaliah. Gedaliah is a puppet governor. He's in league with Nebuchadnezzar. Gedaliah is from a long history of governing family, and that's why his father and his grandfather are listed here, because they were well respected in the Hebrew culture. And Nebuchadnezzar places him in authority, and Jeremiah goes back with him. Now, verse 7. Now when all the captains of the forces which were in the fields, even they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, governor in the land, and and had committed unto him men and women and children and of the poor of the land, of them that were not carried away captive to Babylon, they came to Gedaliah to Mizpah. Even Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, Johanan, and Jonathan, the sons of Kareah, and Seraiah, the son of Tanhumeth, and the sons of Ephai, Netophathite, and Jesina, the son of the Calathite, they and their men. So these are people that had left Jerusalem during the siege, but they did not turn themselves into the Babylonians. They just hid out in the fields. They went to neighboring countries. And when they heard that Gedaliah was in power, they decided to go back. Well, what did Jeremiah say? He was saying, if you want to be preserved, if you want to really be safe, turn yourself over to the Chaldeans and let yourself go into captivity in Babylon. It's going to be for 7 years. You'll be preserved. You'll have everything that you need, and then you'll return when God says it's time. All right, well, here come these men, and they put their faith not in what Jeremiah had said, but in the family history of Gedaliah. Saying, well, you know what? He was a good man. His dad was a good man. And actually, his father had supported Jeremiah. His father said, you know what? We need to take heed what the prophet is saying, because we are a wicked people. So they decided to come back on into Jerusalem. And let's see what happens. Verse 9. And Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, sware unto them and to their men, saying, fear not to serve the Chaldeans. Dwell in the land, and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. Partial truth. Jeremiah said, serve the king of Babylon, but where? In Babylon. Serve the king of Babylon, in Babylon. But what Gedaliah is saying is, you know, serve him here, and things will go well with you here. That's a partial truth. That's kind of like in the garden. Well, God said you can't eat any fruit in the garden. You know, it takes partial truth. And so the men are coming in. Verse 10. But as for me, behold, I will dwell in Mizpah to serve the Chaldeans, which will come unto us. But ye gather ye wine and summer fruits and oil, and put them in your vessels, and dwell in your cities that ye have taken. Likewise, when all the Jews that were in Moab, and among the Ammonites, and in Edom, and all that were in the countries, heard that the king of Babylon had left a remnant of Judah, and that he had sent them over to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, even all those Jews returned out of the places where they were driven, and came to the land of Judah, to Gedaliah, to Mizpah, and gathered wine and summer fruits very much. So they've decided to come back to be under the protectorate of Gedaliah, under the protectorate of the king of Babylon, and that's where they put their trust. Now, there was a reason Jeremiah had said, leave the city, turn yourself over to the Chaldeans, don't stay here. All right, we're going to see what's about to happen. We see Ishmael in this mix in verse 8. Ishmael was one of those that came over to Gedaliah. But we're going to see what happens to Ishmael. Ishmael may just turn out to be a spy. So let's see in verse 13. Moreover, Johanan, the son of Kareah, and all the captains of the forces that were in the fields came to Gedaliah to Mizpah. And they said unto him, dost thou certainly know that Baalis, the king of the Ammonites, hath sent Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, to slay thee? But Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, believed them not. Part of the issue and part of what goes with this land is there were two things, and this is where it's theologically a little, it's not tricky, it's just because the Lord initially, when they were crossing the land, what did he say to do to the peoples that populated the land? Drive them out! But what did they do? Instead of driving them out, they entered into covenants or contracts with them. They entered into all these contracts. They, well, look, pay us a tribute, and you can live here, and they traded with them, and they kept them in the land. And you know what? Because of that decision that they made back there, they're fighting about it tonight, still. They're still fighting because they didn't obey the Lord, said, drive them out, and I will give you the ability to drive them out. They said, well, wait a minute. We can use them to our benefit, so we'll just make some contracts with them. And so the conflict is this: the Lord said, don't ever contract with them. But yet Jeremiah is saying, go on and serve the king of Babylon in Babylon. Well, that's because they're under judgment now. Your judgment is to serve the king of Babylon. So the people are coming back, and they're streaming in, and Johanan knows that Ishmael is actually a traitor, and he's working for those Ammonites. And there's no protection in the land. The Ammonites are there, and you go, you know what? Nebuchadnezzar's gone. You have all the nice fields here. I think we'll just go on and take them. So Gedaliah is informed of the conspiracy, but he didn't believe them. In verse 15, then Johanan the son of Kareah spoke to Gedaliah and Mizpah secretly, saying, let me go, I pray thee, and I will slay Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, and no man shall know it. Wherefore should he slay thee, and all the Jews which are gathered unto thee should be scattered, and the remnant in Judah perish. So again he goes to Gedaliah. Johanan says, look, let me go kill him. Just let me kill him. Why should everybody be destroyed because of this traitor? Verse 16. But Gedaliah the son of Ahikam said unto Johanan the son of Kareah, thou shalt not do this thing, for thou speakest falsely of Ishmael. So he's saying, no, that's not true. I don't believe you. I'm not going to have him killed. And so what happens next? And we'll just start chapter 41. Now it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, son of Elishama, the seed royal, and the princes of the king, even 10 men with him, came to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, to Mizpah, and there they did eat bread together in Mizpah. So Ishmael's coming in. He has 10 men with him, and these are Ammonite spies. In verse 2, then arose Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, and the 10 men that were with him, and they smote Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, with the sword, and slew him, whom the king of Babylon had made governor over the land. The Lord had never promised that if you stay in the land, you'll be protected. And the king of Babylon had set up this puppet government. And the people who were hiding out of Jerusalem, they came, they said, well, you know what? We know Gedaliah and his family. He will protect us. And besides, the king of Babylon is very, very strong. Well, he will protect us. But protection wasn't to be found. So now they've come in, Gedaliah is dead. Well, now what? Verse 3. And Ishmael also slew all the Jews that were with him, even with Gedaliah at Mizpah, and the Chaldeans that were found there, and the men of war. Took them all. The Ammonites took them all. The Hebrews, the Chaldeans, the garrison there at Mizpah, they all fell. They all fell. And what does that tell us? And there's no protection under the arm of man. There's no protection. And it doesn't matter if it looks really, really good. And if it seems like it's workable. The Lord said, trust in me. And this is going back to the same lesson. Don't trust in the Egyptians. Don't trust in the Assyrians. Trust in me. Don't make covenants with these people. They cannot protect you. Well, they reverted back to the same behavior. The same behavior. Well, Gedaliah will protect us. Babylon will protect us. Okay, well now they're slain. Verse 4. And it came to pass the 2nd day after he had slain Gedaliah, and no man knew it. And there were certain from Shechem, from Shiloh, and from Samaria, even 80 men, having their beards shaven, and their clothes rent, and having cut themselves with offerings and incense in their hand, to bring them to the house of the Lord. All right. We've got another problem here. We have, now remember, Shechem and Shiloh. What's significant about Shechem and Shiloh? Those were places that the tabernacle had dwelt. And when the kingdom divided, those were made holy places instead of Jerusalem. So these places were still considered holy because they still had altars there, and they still had worship that was going on there. And so you have these pilgrims that are coming to Jerusalem to pay homage, I guess, to the ruins. I mean, there's nothing there. The temple's been sacked, it's been burned to the ground. But they decide they're going to go back to Jerusalem and offer their sacrifices there, I guess, of whatever's left of the temple. Now, what did the Lord say? Get out of Jerusalem. Get out of here. Leave Jerusalem. Why? Because it's not safe. You will only be protected in Babylon. What is it that Jesus, and we just saw this in Luke, what did Jesus tell the Hebrews? When you see Jerusalem encompassed with these enemies, go. And if you're in outer Judea, leave. Get out of here. Why are so many people, why are so many Jews going to die in that scenario in Ezekiel and Revelation? Why are they going to die? They don't go. It's done. Well, no. Why? The temple will protect us. Jerusalem will protect. The walls will protect us. NATO will protect. America will protect us. Whatever it's going to be. We're going to see the same scenario happen again. Okay? And so, we'll do a couple more verses here. So, Ishmael, the son of Nethiah, went forth from Mizpah to meet them, weeping all along as he went. And he came to pass and met them. And he said unto them, come to Gedaliah, the son of Achab. Now, Gedaliah's already dead. He's already dead. He's already slain him. So Ishmael, he's pretending to mourn with these pilgrims. Oh, cry, oh, yeah, Jerusalem's all burned up. It's a sad thing. Why don't y'all come? Y'all come with me. And it was so, when they came into the midst of the city, Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, slew them and cast them into the midst of the pit, he and the men that were with him. But 10 men were found among them that said unto Ishmael, slay us not, for we have treasures in the field of wheat, barley, oil, and honey. So he forbare and slew them not among their brethren. So he slew all the pilgrims with the exception of some men that he thought he could get something out of them because they had value in their fields. He said, all right, I'll spare you, not out of mercy, but out of money. And so we'll pick up next time here with verse 9, and we'll look at this pit. This is a very historical pit. And there's a reason that they were thrown in this pit. We've seen this pit before. And so they're in the pit, but it just goes back to just basic obedience. And so next week we'll pick up here, and we'll go and we'll see what Johanan does. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it does. It does. Okay, so we'll continue the saga, and our hero Jeremiah he's going to see what's going on. He's going to raise himself up again, put himself in the middle of it one more time. We'll see if they listen to him this time or not. Okay.